Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Good morning and welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. I'm Sonia, of course, Jack. Good morning again, Jack. You know, we've been talking backstage, but wanted to welcome our audience in on today, this first weekly episode. Well, no, today's Wednesday, second weekly episode. Lose track of time here. Today, coming up on May 21st, 2025. We hope everyone's doing well. Jack, of course, our NBA playoffs got off to a not really a shocking start. Of course, the Thunder and their nemesis, as we should say at this point.
Well, I don't know the Minnesota Timberwolves exactly a nemesis of OKC. I can't see any rivalry there. I could maybe see a little more of a rivalry, the Timberwolves and the Lakers, who the Timberwolves knocked off in the playoffs. But OKC was true to who they were in the second half of the game yesterday. They broke open a close game. All of a sudden, the Timberwolves had a hard time making a basket, in large part because of OKC's smothering defense. And that's who they are. I mean, they don't have a lot of stars in that team. They have SGA, one of the best players in the game, obviously. But beyond him, there's just a bunch of very good players like Chet Holmgren, a very good player. Jay Williams, very good player. But they win on defense for the most part. They know how to play the game. They play old-fashioned basketball, OKC, and it showed in the second half. Where was Rudy Gobert? Where the heck was Rudy Gobert? For a while, Rudy Gobert was looking so good that Shaquille O'Neal, who was one of his biggest critics, said, I can't believe I'm saying this, Rudy Gobert's turned into a force.
He jinxed him. That's exactly what happened.
Soft. Rudy Gobert was softer than an ice cream cone.
Yeah, he was like a cotton ball. Shaq jinxed him. You know, whenever you have a situation that somebody's been literally like your biggest critic and you finally get that praise or whatever, it kind of pumps your head up. And as a result, he flopped. And so now today, Shaq's going to be talking about him the opposite. Like, okay, I was wrong. Clearly, I should have kept my opinion to myself. I was right all along about the type of person he was, type of player he was.
It reminds me of when Michael Jordan came back to a huddle with Luke Longley. Longley was playing great on the Bulls at that time, that game. And Jordan was amazed. He told him, man, you are really good. I mean, you're outstanding the way you play. And then Longley reverted back to being very average. And then when he got back to the huddle, the next time Jordan told him, I'm never going to compliment you again. You know, what was I talking about? You know?
It is so rough. The NBA is so rough.
I'm paraphrasing.
114-88, dominant game by the Thunder. I mean, the T-Wolves were mauled and demauled. Game 2, of course.
No, score's deceiving, Sonia. Score's deceiving because it was a close game for a while, you know, and they broke it open in the fourth period.
Okay, well, I know, you know, I know that this is what was expected. Even though the score is deceiving, I know that people have literally predicted that the Thunder was going to run away with this series from the beginning. Like, no matter who it was they played, people have OKC as the super competitive team to actually win it all, Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Minnesota to upset OKC in this series. Let's see what happens in the second game. But I'm going to tell you this. If the Wolves go out in this series in, let's say, 5 games, something. I'm just throwing an X amount of games. I don't want to hear all this Anthony Edwards talk about being a big star. You got to elevate your
He
team.
doesn't want it. He doesn't want
Julius
to be
Randle did what he
NBA.
could yesterday. Julius Randle was fine yesterday, all in all. But with Anthony Edwards, I hold him to a different standard. If Anthony Edwards is just an average guy out there, I could say he played a good game yesterday. But Anthony Edwards is expected to play like a superstar. If you want to be one, you have to be one. I remember what Terry Bradshaw was John Elway's biggest critic. He didn't like John Elway. The way Elway came out of college, said, well, I only want to play in California because it's warmer then. He thought he was a spoiled, rotten surfer kid. But when John Elway lost his first 3 Super Bowls, Terry Bradshaw didn't mean to poke fun at him. He said, great players have to play great in big games. And he didn't mean it as a dig on Elway, but it's the truth. If you're a great player, you have to play great in big games. Now, I can condone it more in baseball in the case of an Aaron Judge. You play 162 games, you're playing so much, you kind of run out of steam at the end. But in the NBA, you can't, because one player can take over a game. In baseball, a position player, it's hard to take over a game. But in the NBA, Anthony Edwards has got to take over, a couple of these games if he's a superstar. And Rudy Gobert, was the biggest trade in NBA history to me as far as a quantity goes. Because what Utah got in exchange for trading Rudy Gobert, what Minnesota had to give up. And Rudy Gobert can't just be a good player. Yesterday, he wasn't even close to average, let alone good.
I forgot he was out there. Gobert looked like a phantom. And I'm going to be honest, we talked a little bit before the show started how Shaq had been one of his biggest critics. And as soon as Shaq was like, okay, he kind of came back a little bit, Gobert, of course, a French professional. I mean, maybe it's a cultural thing. He was widely regarded, though, Jack, before yesterday's lack of playing, as one of the best defensive players of all time. 4-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year and 7-time All-Defensive First Team member, leading the league in blocks and rebounds in previous seasons. They call him the Stifle Tower, but I don't know.
I mean, you could compile stats sometimes. Keep this in mind. When Gobert was with Utah, he had Donovan Mitchell on the team. They didn't win there. Now they have Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Gobert. That should be a great big 3, and they have depth as well as that. But I don't put the blame on one guy. Let's see whether Minnesota shows up for game 2. If they win game 2 in OKC, the series is turned, once again. But if they fall down 2-0, is Minnesota out of it? No, they're not out of it, but you can do the math. To win 4 out of 5 against OKC, that's going to be real, real difficult.
Well, let me ask you this, Jack. So he's had his own little battles here and there. Of course, he punched his teammate last season, Kyle Anderson. Do you think this was during a game. Do you think that maybe after that happened, that maybe the critics really rolled in and were a little bit more analytical of his actual playing?
You're talking about Anthony Edwards?
Anderson, yeah, No, I'm talking about Gobert.
Gobert's I'm a little confused. Gobert's always been a timid guy, though, on the court. He's not been the one that has instigated these fights. Listen, you're a center. There's going to be some shoving. You might get into it a little bit. But Gobert by nature isn't the most aggressive guy. I mean, Draymond Green came over and grabbed him from behind. Good morning, Richard. Grabbed him from behind. Yeah. But Gobert's not the type of guy who's an intimidator per se.
Yeah, he got some nerve, Draymond Green, to try to grab anybody. But okay,
well, let me ask you, Sonja. Sonja, who's your least favorite athlete?
Draymond Green.
Aaron Rodgers.
Athletes?
Yeah, athletes.
It's so close between Draymond and Aaron right now. It's so close. If Aaron didn't treat the Jets the way he did, I would be indifferent. I really didn't pay that much attention to Aaron Rodgers' personality until he came to the Jets. I was more so like, okay, he's a great player. The way he just from the onset of coming on with the Jets, just lackadaisical, I'm here, you guys are there. I'm Gladys Knight, you're the Pips type mentality. It just made me look at him different. And now that he's been released, and the way he has, I don't even want to say courted the Pittsburgh Steelers because I don't even know what's going on. It's insane. It's just he's a drama queen. He likes attention. And to me, I'm like, dude, you're either going to play or you're not.
So it seems like Aaron is your least favorite, and you take Raymond a little ahead of him. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. I'm not looking at the Aaron Rodgers segment.
Yes, of course. We got the Eastern Conference game that's going to be tonight, Jack, at 8 p.m. The Pacers, game 1 against the Knicks. Well, should I say the Knicks are hosting the Pacers?
Let me say something that angered me. It had indirectly, it has nothing to do with the game per se, but it does in a sense. After the Knicks beat the Celtics, they noticed a Tyrese Halliburton fan, an Indiana Pacer fan with a jersey on, just walking in the street, minding his own business. They were following him. They were pelting him with garbage. I mean, it's outrageous to me. As a New Yorker, I'm absolutely outraged over the behavior of the Knicks fans because it reflects on the city, reflects very poorly on the city. And I'm going to be honest about it. If Knicks fans are that low, and if the majority of Knicks fans were amused by that behavior, then I'm rooting for the Indiana Pacers to beat my team in my own home city. If that's the type of conduct we're going to display over a fan just walking with a jersey, minding his own business, because they're absolutely entitled, a visiting team, for fan to walk with their jersey. They're not making any statement. They're not poking fun at Knicks fans. They're not trolling them in any way. They're just walking in the darn street. And the nerve of someone else to throw something at them, it's absolutely sickening to hear that. And Halliburton invited that fan to come to game, I think, 4, the Nick Pacer game. He invited him and a guest, that fan. So with that said, I'm rooting for the Knicks because I think it, in all probability, was a small pack of idiots who I wish there was a way to find out who they were. Have them pay some fine or something. Maybe have them pay for season tickets for this Indiana Pacer fan, or pay for him to have a trip to New York next time or whatever. But with that said, a lot of times we like to talk about who does it mean more to win a series. Does it mean more for the Pacers or more for the Knicks? And just backtracking to the last series, I think it means a little more to the Timberwolves than OKC to win it, but that's arguable, But the Knicks and Pacers, I think it absolutely means more to the Knicks. They lost to the Pacers last year in the playoffs. They went up 2-0 to the Pacers and lost in 7 games. And if the Knicks can't get to the finals now, when are they ever going to get to the finals?
Exactly.
I mean, this is it. The path has been cleared. The Celtics are out of the way. Kudos to the Knicks for clearing their own path. The Bucks weren't that good this year. The Sixers weren't relevant at all. And the Pacers are a beatable team. They're a very beatable team, but they're playing so good. Let me take that back when I say very beatable. They're not very beatable because they have been playing so good for a while, but they don't have the big name stars. They just don't on that team. And it's a series the Knicks definitely can win. Do I think they're going to win it? If I put my emotions aside, I'm going to call it for the Pacers in 7 games, only because of how well they've been playing. They use their bench a little better than the Knicks, but maybe that's going to change because Mitchell Robinson, is in the equation, a lot more coming back from the injury, and he played real well in the Celtics series. McBride, it definitely could be a big factor off the bench. So we'll see. But I look for 7-game series. I don't expect anything less.
Well, let me ask you this, Jack, because you kind of pointed out some of the stars that are on these teams. I've noticed, not necessarily in the series where we are now, but just overall, do you think, and this is a really good question, maybe a debate question actually, but I do want to ask you your opinion. Do you think sometimes that teams can just be so talented with the big name stars that they just kind of get in their own way, to the fact that they don't perform at the peak that we think or that they really should be to try to get a championship?
No, I don't. I understand your theory, but not in this case. I mean, the Knicks' big star is Jalen Brunson. Brunson has a weakness. Sometimes he tries to do a little too much at times. I've seen him
Right.
have the ball and just try to overpower the defense, driving to the basket. They cut him off. He doesn't have a good shot. He still
Mhm.
goes up with it anyway. So sometimes Brunson is isolated a little too much. But look, when you look at the way he's performed for the Knicks, can you really be critical of it? Because, a lot of the times he's performed magnificently and he's their main guy. Uh, I was listening yesterday and they were, I think it was First Take, they were talking about, and Spike Lee was on, can Brunson establish himself as the greatest Nick of all time? And let's not get carried away and make him the greatest Nick of all time. As a one-on-one player, Brunson's not better than Carmelo Anthony, yet, Carmelo Anthony wasn't the type of player who won in the NBA. His game I don't mean to say was a selfish player. He wasn't, but he didn't really play, tenacious defense. Okay.
Mhm.
At times he wouldn't play defense at all, it seemed. But he was a great individual talent. And how do you compare Patrick Ewing to a Brunson? I mean, come on. I mean, it's a different
Right.
position, different player, world
Different
class
era, different
treasure.
time era. Like it's I think there's great players for different eras, Jack. I don't, unless you have really like risen the bar. You've raised the bar so high that it's almost unattainable. I just believe not necessarily in greatest of all time. I believe in players for every era, and that's for every
Yeah.
sport. People can debate that, but if you break it down to numbers, then there are times that there is that one standout player that they're so high that nobody's probably ever going to touch them. But then when you look at like comparisons of like maybe one or two or three players that they actually have stats that are so similar and you can't differentiate them, then the only thing you can do is like, okay, that was during that period, like 30 years ago, we had, this player, now it's that, and you can compare them because that person has already set that standard.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and you nailed it perfectly with different eras, Sonia. I agree with you completely on that. But the point, I maybe got a little off track the way I was talking, but the point is this. If you had a Kobe Bryant, you feel you have a real superstar who could take control of the game, and Brunson is taking control of games. But are you really going to say, oh, he's as good as Kobe Bryant, for example? Like, let's go like, whoa,
Yeah.
maybe when his career's over, we'll be saying that. I mean, I don't know, but I think we get a little carried away, with that type of narrative. But the Knicks and Pacers, it's a great, great game. Two great coaches. Rick Carlisle is phenomenal, arguably the best coach in the NBA, Rick Carlisle. And Tom Thibodeau is a heck of a coach. He's come under
Tom better
criticism.
start resting his vets. He better start knowing how to alternate that bench because those guys have to be tired, Jack. If he does not learn how to alternate some of the bench in for at least a little bit of breather here and there, he doesn't even want to take his guys out when they're facing being fouled out. Like he just lets it ride. And I mean, those guys are playing like over 45 minutes of those games. That's a lot.
Yeah, Mikal Bridges doesn't seem to mind. He has like a high motor. But, come crunch time, a couple of them are going to have to handle the ball. Notably, Jalen Brunson, the ball's going to be going to him at crunch time when you talk about the last few minutes of the game. But I'm sure there's going to be, I think at least there's going to be one or two blowouts maybe in this series. But for the most part, the games are going to be nip and tuck, and they're going to come down to the wire.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's an intriguing series. It really is. And what was more impressive to you? Let me ask you, Sonia. The Knicks beating the way the Knicks beat the Celtics, or the way the Pacers beat the Cavaliers? That's a good question. That's a debatable question. What's
That
more
is a
impressive?
debatable question.
We can't say it was Saturday because they would have started their next series.
Yeah, I feel like for now though, the way the Knicks folded up the Celtics in that last game just surmounted everything. To hold every veteran star on that team, Jack, to a single digit performance was shocking to me. I don't think I've ever heard of your starting five. Nobody even had 10 points. Nobody had 10 rebounds. It was almost like, you know how they call it a triple double? This was like a triple single.
Yeah, well, to me, I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm really not. If I'm pushed to give an answer, I'd say I was a tiny bit more impressed by what the Pacers did. Just watching them. The Knicks were able to capitalize on really poor Celtic shooting, and Jason Tatum wasn't there for Game 6. But the way the Knicks dominated, it probably wouldn't have made a difference, even though we'll never know. But the Pacers also came back from deficits to beat the Cavaliers in the way they did it. And I like the ball movement with the Pacers just a little better, if I had to draw a comparison. But intriguing.
Yeah, and let's not forget too, Chris Porzingis was playing at a poor level because of him having this viral issue this
Yeah.
whole series. So two big folks that clearly were difference makers. I mean, it's the same thing with the Warriors. Steph going down proved to be the cornerstone of that team, and they just got annihilated quickly. You brought up Carmelo Anthony for a quick second. We were talking about comparisons. And so I want to congratulate he and Michael Jordan are set to embark on their careers in sports broadcasting, Jack, specifically with the NBC's coverage of the NBA. They'll be starting up the 25-26 season. Jordan, of course, will be bringing a special contribution. He's going to be labeled as a special contributor to the NBA and WNBA coverage on NBC and Peacock. Maybe this will get the WNBA some spark that they've, talked about the lulls that they have. And Carmelo Anthony will be coming as a studio analyst. And he already has a podcast called 7 p.m. in Brooklyn with Carmelo Anthony. So he stayed true to the New York ties. And it's going to be interesting to see both of them in the booth and commenting, so to speak, especially Jordan.
I'm going to tell you with Carmelo Anthony, don't get me wrong, he won a national championship at Syracuse. He was a really devoted member to USA basketball, won 3 gold medals. He never won an NBA title. I don't like hearing Carmelo Anthony say, well, had the Pistons drafted me, they would have won a couple of extra NBA championships.
Oh, he can't.
Get off.
Yeah.
It,
He can say it on his podcast, but not here.
I don't go for it. I don't buy it. Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. If I thought he was right, I'd say I agree with them. But, who knows? But it sounds like whining. He forced his way out of Denver. George Karl would argue with him all the time. You got to play defense, but it was, beneath him to be a tenacious defender per se. Okay, but terrific player. Don't get me wrong. He might be a great humanitarian, a nice guy. He didn't get in trouble off the court. So, but I'm tired of these guys like speculating, well, if they took me, we would have won this, we would have won that. If you have a track record of winning somewhere else, then you can make that comment. I just don't want to hear it. And when you, but the point I was trying to make, when you look at Carmelo Anthony, he's going into the Hall of Fame. Should he go in as a Knick or should he go in as a Denver Nugget?
Oh
Because
no, he needs to stay with New York, going in as a Knick. Going in as a Knick.
What do you look at him more? I look at him more as being a Denver Nugget. Sonja, you're good at looking things up quickly. Tell me how many years he played for Denver and how many he played for New York. It's pretty comparable off the top of my head.
I think, let's see. Let me see what they got here for him. And while I'm looking that up, the NBA is also going to be bringing in some other analysts that are coming in. Now, let's see. Carmelo was drafted in 2003, third by the Denver Nuggets.
LeBron James. Yeah, LeBron went
played
first.
19 seasons in the NBA from 2003 to 2011, which is 8 years with the Nuggets.
That's and 9, actually.
Sorry, yeah, 9 years. And then he played, yes, very close, New York Knicks 2011 to 2017. He also played with the Thunder, Rockets, Trailblazers, and the Lakers. I forgot about that.
Okay, right. The other teams. They played 9 years with the Nuggets.
8 and 7.
8 years. Okay. Thanks, Steve-O. 8 and 7. But sometimes it's deceiving. Like if you say a player played 2009 through 2010, we think of it as 1 year, but it's really 2 years, the 2009 and the 2010 season. But the point is, he played 1 extra year with the Nuggets. So why is assuming, he's a Knicks player? He didn't. They never went to the finals with the Knicks with him there. Neither did the Nuggets go to the finals.
But Jack, he holds records for the Knicks. He has the all-time single game scoring record for the Knicks at Madison.
Gosh,
62 points. He's highly decorated. He's a first ballot inductee of the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. Like, he got a lot of his stuff.
But that's fine. Oh, wait. He's not a first ballot thing because he inducted because he's with the Knicks alone. As far as being the all-time scorer 1 game, okay, let's just call Wilt Chamberlain the greatest player of all time because he holds the record 100 points for 1 game, and no one has gotten in the 90s before. So Wilt's number 1. He holds the record. Come on, son. Don't tell me 1 game.
Yeah, when you say it like that.
Good for him. I mean, listen, he was a great player.
Let me ask you, do they get a chance? Don't they get a chance to choose? Like if it comes down to it?
He had a hard time getting a job at the end of his career. He had to reinvent himself and be a second wheel. Look, when Jeremy Lin came up, when Carmelo Anthony was hurt on the Knicks and became an overnight sensation. I mean, Carmelo Anthony obviously is a far better player than Jeremy Lin was, but Jeremy Lin was creating a feel-good story. And when Jeremy Lin eventually moved on to Houston, Carmelo Anthony tweeted something that was like indirectly like a put down. You know, I didn't go for that, honestly speaking. It was indirect, but it showed there was kind of like a jealousy, like, oh, I'm the man, I'm the this, I'm the that. Look, Carmelo Anthony, great player. He wasn't any more of a Knick than he was a Nugget. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Everyone don't they let them choose at some point? Like they're gonna ask him, right? Is that what happens?
Carmelo was not as great a Knick player as Walt Clyde Frazier. But if you want to argue he was a better player than Walt Frazier, that's a fair argument to make. But as a Knick, there's certain players who are with franchises, and we link them to a franchise as the all-time best player on that franchise. And Carmelo doesn't rate because he wasn't a career Knick. He was there, 8 years, which is a substantial amount of time. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't on the top of the list with the Ewings, the Walt Fraziers, the Willis Reeds as being a great Knick.
So I'm going to ask you again, Jack. I've asked you 3 times. When it's basically a split like that, do they allow the player to choose where they want to retire? I mean, where they want to go down?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And players do what they want. It's sometimes very difficult. Look, a player like Reggie Jackson, in his whole career, He played for the Angels, the Orioles, the Athletics, and the Yankees. The bulk of it was with the Athletics and Yankees. He was with the Athletics a total of 9 years in his career, and he was with the Yankees a total of 5 years. He won 3 World Series as a member of the Oakland Athletics, 2 World Series as a member of the Yankees, yet he elected to go in as a Yankee, and Major League Baseball was okay with it because Reggie Jackson created such a buzz during his time in New York, like the 3 home runs in the last World Series game in 1977 when they won it, that I can understand that. Okay, I can understand that. But then Major League Baseball changed their rules because Wade Boggs went in as a Tampa Bay Ray. And what did he do? Play 1 year with the Rays? I guess they offered him some money or some deal, and that was inappropriate. He should have gone in as a Red Sox.
Yeah, I don't know, Jack. I mean, like I always say, the verdict is still out. I'm sure he'll choose to go in, as a Nick because he's so New York. His whole podcast is all Brooklyn centered. Like he just loves New York, and so
I don't blame him. Sonia.
Yeah, but he's not gonna pay homage to the team that drafted him. But okay.
Look, Carmelo Anthony showed you could call him a winner. He won a national championship with Syracuse. That he proved himself. He was there 1 year, won the NCAA tournament. That proved that he absolutely is a winner. His 3 gold medals. He was with a stacked team in the Olympics, the other NBA stars. But look what he did at Syracuse. How many players win NCAA championships?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And Steve was talking about what about Shohei? He's an angel, but he's an angel to me, but Juan is a Dodger already. So
no, he'll be when Ohtani retires. He's going to go in as a Dodger. No ifs or buts about it. The Angels didn't win anything with Ohtani. The team, there was no buzz around the team outside of Ohtani being on it when he was there, and Mike Trout, of course, too. But Ohtani's going to go in as a Dodger, assuming he finishes out his career there for the most part.
Yeah. All right. So moving along here, let's plug in real quick some NHL news. Then we're going to go over to NFL. Then we're going to talk about a little boxing here. The Florida Panthers versus the Carolina Hurricanes. Panthers are 1-0. Last time these two teams faced off, Jack, was 2023, and the Panthers swept the Hurricanes. It's so weird for me to say Carolina Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, because everybody knows the Carolina Panthers are the NFL team that I love so much.
But that's ironic, isn't it? The Carolina Hurricanes, the people in Carolina say we're playing the Panthers. It's
kind of like so weird. Of course, the Panthers.
Let me ask you this, and I never asked you this before with the Carolina Hurricanes. Are they nearly as popular as the Carolina Panthers of the NFL?
No, but so this is the thing. There's a totally separate fan base for that. They've tried in the metro area so many times to pump up. I think when they first came out, there was a lot of hype around them. Then, it just kind of fizzled out, especially with Atlanta at the time. They had a team, I think that's who they had. I can't remember, the Thrashers. And then once that kind of fizzled out, something just happened. There was a disconnect. Then I think the pandemic really kind of broke up the hypeness around the Hurricanes, to be honest with you, Jack. They're on an upward trend now. More people are tuning in, especially now that they've run, another championship series back here for the Stanley Cup playoffs. This is their 3rd time, I believe, in as many 3 years trying to get to the playoffs. I know for a fact if they win the Stanley Cup, that will really create the hype that they're needing. They've been so close so many times. And of course, in the game 1, 5-2, Carter and Aaron, early goals for the Panthers, Sergei, strong in the net, all that stuff. The Hurricanes had been 5-0 at home in the playoffs, Jack. That's big, and that's enough to get the fans really engaged. Of course, next game is Thursday at 8:00 in Raleigh. So I'm looking. I mean, when you see them on TV, it's a crowded event, So the attendance is there, but like I said, I think it's kind of like once they start getting towards championship status, that the fans and would-be fans start really kind of tuning in. I've made a mental note to try to be more aware of what they got going on year-round so I can kind of be more versed in that. And so I'm pretty sure a lot of other players, but then you have your tried and true, hockey fans that are true fans and have been since day one. Of course, in the Western Conference Final, the Dallas Stars are making a run for it again. We saw them last year as well, too. This time they're going against Edmonton Oilers. The series, has not started yet, starting tonight. Game 1, 8 o'clock in Dallas. This is going to be a rematch of the 2024 Western Finals that they had. The Oilers won in 6 games. And, I like to look at the comparison. They literally run the same type of series as the NBA, the same type of year and everything. The Stars have strong goaltending abilities with Jake Oringer, and they have a deep roster. So hopefully this will be their year that they can get back. Of course, they got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl for the Oilers, two of their best players. They're going to be on tonight as well. A lot of hockey news and stuff. Let's switch over to NFL. We got just a few minutes because we want to talk about some boxing news as well. I almost said the Sheagles. The Eagles, everybody calls them the Sheagles, have given Nick Sirianni a multi-year extension. They have not really released all the financials, but they've come up, of course he deserves his previous contract, 5 years from the 2021 season when he was hired. He's basically led them to a Super Bowl. It's a non-factor, a no-brainer, as I like to say, that he would be getting this type of contract. So congratulations to him. Of course, other NFL news, Fred Warner with the 49ers gets a big contract as well on yesterday or day before yesterday. I know we were on air on Monday. So it has happened since then. 5-year deal for Fred. Of course, the Jets, your team, Jack, has released Greg Zuerlein. It's a move signaling their continued youth movement. They're trying to make their team more youthful. You got some feedback going, Jack. I don't know what's going on. Good morning, Miss Linda. He says, I'm here with you both. It's always a great show. Thank you.
Hi, Linda. How you doing?
Jack, what happened? You guys are releasing, y'all trying to bring just a lot
Greg Zuerlein was the reason we lost a couple of games last year, missed big kicks. If Greg Zuerlein had made a couple of kicks, it would have changed the narrative during the season.
It was your quarterback.
Before
he put y'all in a position where you had to make those kicks. Your quarterback was the problem.
No, it wasn't. Aaron Rodgers, I could tell you, would get the team in field goal position at the end of the game. Zuerlein would line up for the winning kick, and it would go wide. It just bad. Yeah, Zuerlein was bad last year, and you could look at it 2 ways. You could say it was an off year, bring him back. What can he do going forward? But sometimes you got to change the culture in the room. And if the team has Zuerlein around, they're not going to have confidence that he can get it done again. So they moved on from him last year, actually, but it just became official now. He was on the injured list, and they just had to. Yeah, they had to move on. He's a journeyman.
He's a journeyman, so to speak. You guys, I remember him playing. He's been playing for a little bit, but I'm gonna be like this. This is always the theory, and this is not just for the Jets. This is across the board because people have told me when I'm like, oh man, my kicker cost us the game. No, they did not. If your plays are played throughout all 4 quarters, you don't put your game on the line with your kicker. Like you just can't do that because that's literally riding. It's like a 50-50 every single time. And so for me, I'm gonna say that's a whole Jets issue, and it starts with the little toxic quarterback you guys had.
No, you have to be able to count on. You have to be able to count on.
And they're garbage, Jack. And now that you guys taking out the trash with Aaron Rodgers, you may have a chance of winning a couple of games next season.
Yeah. The Jets in the next 3 seasons, we're going to go to the playoffs one time on the next 3 seasons. May at most win 1 playoff game, but I'm not optimistic about that. They're going to feel, Justin Fields is okay. And at the end of 3 years, we're going to see, we're not a threat to win the Super Bowl. And then we're going to have another quarterback. I don't want to hear this 8-9, 9-8 season under Aaron Glenn and hear how wonderful Aaron Glenn is. Please, I don't want to hear that this year.
Y'all might turn it around, but, I will tell you this. Go ahead and get your Kleenex ready for the Panthers game because you won't be beating us, but you might beat some other people in the South, but just not the Panthers.
Well, I'll take it week by week, as it comes along. But
I'll be
but they're
rooting for
getting
you
younger.
guys
The
when you
Jets are
play
getting
Saints.
the Jets are getting younger. Getting back with Nick Sirianni, he had 1 year left on his contract. Now, this is what bothers me about coaches in general, how they're perceived by the media and the fans, who basically, I don't want to say are clueless, but I'll say mindless, okay, normally. If a coach has 1 year left on his contract, there are two ways you could go with it. If the team doesn't extend the coach is a free agent at the end of that season. They could play out the year. And imagine if Nick Sirianni said to the Eagles, no, I'm not signing the contract until the end of the year. He's a free agent. He could go to any NFL team he wants. He could go to the highest bidder if you're that good of a coach, and teams are going to need a coach. He's going to have a job somewhere. Maybe he's going to be in major demand. And if you're the Eagles too, if you really want him to be a guy of the future, you're sure about it, you extend them. And that was a smart thing for the Eagles
to make sure he don't go nowhere else. To make sure
that was a smart thing to do because Nick Sirianni deserved it. He absolutely deserved it. And the Eagles and Sirianni both, came to a meeting of the minds. I'm not sure what the dollar value was, but I'm sure it was fair. He has something like 5 years left with the Eagles. That's the way you do it. I don't want to hear about people complaining about a manager, coach being lame duck if they have 1 year left on their contract. If you sign in other words, Sonja, if you sign the contract for 4 years, after 3 years, the team's not obligated to extend you. Finish out your damn darn deal.
Yeah.
And then you sit down with the team. And if the team is so scared you're going to go elsewhere, then they're going to move forward and they're going to try to extend you early. With players, it's different, okay? Yep. With players, it's different, but even then, it's somewhat different. They're under no obligation to extend you. I'm sick of hearing this term lame duck. I mean, no one is a lame duck unless you're maybe an interim coach that got the job that year and you have no idea whether the team is going to want to rehire at the end of the year.
Or if your performance has been so bad that this is your last year and that they're probably looking for another coach to replace you. You're a lame duck then.
I know in some cases there's a lame duck coach. But if let's say the Eagles weren't going to sign Nick Sirianni this year and let him play out the final year of his contract, okay? That would, in this case, it would have shown a complete lack of faith in Sirianni despite winning a Super Bowl. And that would have been a terrible look. The man won a Super Bowl. He went to 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years. And you're going to let him play out the last year and let him walk? Perhaps if he wants to, that would have looked terrible, but it didn't happen. It was a win-win situation for Sirianni and the Eagles. And keep this in mind, 1 year ago, a lot of people thought Nick Sirianni might not even come back. Okay, keep that in mind.
Kind of like they're saying Mike Tomlin, Jack. Like people have been talking about that for like the last 3 seasons. And they like to say they haven't had a losing season, but you guys are not winning the playoffs either. So I don't know how they like to phrase that to try to make themselves feel better or whatever. I guess because they break the 500 mark and make it to the wild card, they're not losing. That's crazy to me. Nobody else said that.
This happened. Mike Tomlin's situation similar to Don Shula's in Miami. Shula would have post winning records every year, get to the playoffs. Dolphins would get eliminated right away. And there was a fatigue set in after a while. When a team doesn't get to a Super Bowl, fatigue starts setting in with the fan base. And that's what's happening with Tomlin. Look, the Steelers could go 10-7 this year and lose in the first game of the playoffs. And the fan base, there's going to be unrest. The same old story that feels going on. I'm not optimistic they're going to go 10-7. I mean, it looks to me like Tomlin might have his first losing record in a while. they better address the quarterback situation. Mason Rudolph is a little better than people think, but he's not the answer moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that. And Steve-O has a good point. They're getting ready to vote on all these rules about the tush push and all this other stuff that they're going to be looking at. Of course, they just ruled that NFL players can compete in the Olympics, Jack. That's going to be
They
interesting.
can. Flag football.
Yeah, flag football, but I mean, to make their name in the Olympics is pretty big. So kudos to them. But I had to ask you about that Tomlin situation. So, and congratulations to Sirianni, Fred Warner. Of course, we talked about Brock Purdy getting his extension. He's no longer Mr. Irrelevant.
But how much money you get guaranteed, Sonja? I think Warner had a 3-year extension, not 5. I could be wrong.
For who?
Werner, but Brock Purdy was guaranteed out of his 235 million, so he's guaranteed 181 million.
He's the highest paid quarterback now.
He did well for himself. Look, Purdy is the Niner franchise quarterback to me. People got down on him last year. I think he had enough of a body of work to show he's the guy for the Niners moving forward.
I mean, I don't subscribe to paying these quarterbacks a lot of money who have not produced some type of at least a NFC or AFC championship. We see how they paid Trevor Lawrence, got a lot of coins last year. The details of Purdy, I mean, of course, Purdy taking the very last in the draft. None of that matters now. The last shall be first, to quote some of my favorite Bible scriptures. But he's got a $265 million contract extension. It's going to keep him as a 49er through 2030, Jack. Oh my God, 2030. I'm sitting up here doing the math like, wow. Annual average is going to be $53 million. It's going to tie him to Jared Goff as the 7th highest paid quarterback in NFL by average annual value. $181 million in guarantees. 100.
That's the key point. What you guaranteed. That's the important number.
But then he got $100 million that was fully guaranteed at signing. He's getting $166.505 million in the first 3 years, and is structured to be front loaded, meaning that a lot of it's paid up front.
Sonja, he deserves it on today's market, because keep in mind, when he was performing for the Niners, taking them to a Super Bowl, he was making like $800,000 a year. One year was making like about 4 something.
That's true.
He deserves it. He deserves it. On today's
congratulations to him. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, if whether or not McCaffrey comes back healthy or doesn't come back, or does, because he's been injured. Of course, they don't have Brandon Ayuk anymore. A lot of big names. He's going to have to really show and prove with how they've built in the draft and in the offseason to build around
This Super Bowl window, I feel, is closed. But Deebo Samuel's not there anymore. I feel it's closed, their Super Bowl window. But maybe they'll rebound. Maybe they'll show resiliency and get to the playoffs. Who knows? I mean, there's still talent on the team.
Yeah, let's switch over. We got about 9 minutes left, Jack. We kind of got on the NBA, and I love it. Always a great conversation, Jack and myself. Good morning to everyone joining us. Thank you so much for sharing, liking, and commenting this morning. Let's talk some MLB news. Pirates shut out the Reds.
Quickly on MLB news, because I'd rather, Sonja, let me call an audible on you, okay? You send in the play, you're the producer, kind of. You send in the play. MLB news, I'm the quarterback. You sent that in to me, but I'm going to do an audible to boxing because it's more important.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I need to talk about it.
All right, let's talk about boxing.
Former middleweight champion of the world, Nino Benvenuti, passed away at the age of 87. And a lot of the fans out there who are not really true boxing fans maybe didn't hear of Nino Benvenuti, but let me tell you about him. He was a world middleweight champion when there was only one champion per division, not like the nonsense you have today, 4 champions per division. In 1960, the 1960 Olympics, Cassius Clay, as he was known then, later to become Muhammad Ali, he won a gold medal in those Olympics. The American team won a couple other gold medals, but the boxer voted the outstanding fighter of those Olympics in 1960 was Nino Benvenuti from Rome, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Nino Benvenuti then went on to win the first 65 fights of his professional career. So when we hear this nonsense about Floyd Mayweather record, Marciano 49-0 record, 50-0, other fighters have exceeded that, but then they continue to fight and they lose. Nino Benvenuti, in 1967, took New York by storm. He came to Madison Square Garden and he upset Emil Griffith to win the
Mm-hmm.
middleweight championship of the world. And then they had a rematch later that year at Shea Stadium, and the great Emil Griffith regained the title by a decision. And then they had a rubber match on March 4th, 1968. It opened up the new Madison Square Garden. You know, when Madison Square Garden opened up, the arena now, as we know it, 1968, they wanted to put on the most special event. They didn't put on a basketball game or hockey game. They had boxing. They had a double header to open the Garden, something special for their first night at the new Garden. Joe Frazier fought Buster Mathis and Nino Benvenuti in the co-main event fought Emil Griffith, and Benvenuti regained the title, beating Griffith on a close decision in 1968. And then there'd be some great title defenses he have. Notably, he knocked out Luis Rodriguez, former welterweight champion, who was top middleweight contender, with one punch. And eventually, like all fighters, Benvenuti declined and he lost the title to Carlos Monzon, got stopped, and then in the rematch, he couldn't regain it with Monzon. But he was a great, great fighter, and he was a successful businessman in Italy. He did really, really good for himself. But the funny thing about the Griffith Benvenuti trilogy, they were great rivals in the ring. And there may have seemed to be a little bit of bitterness, but when Benvenuti's son was born, he made Griffith the godfather of his son.
Oh, cool.
And Griffith was very popular in Italy. That was the ironic part about it. And Griffith told me Benvenuti would fly him to Italy and they'd sit down with a crowd of people and they'd be watching the Benvenuti Griffith fights. And this is in Italy. And Griffith was saying as many people were cheering for me as for him. And I remember Vito Antifermo, who I know very well, a friend of mine, who later became world middleweight champion himself. He was a kid in Italy during the time, and he said, I had two idols, Griffith and Benvenuti. And Benvenuti, he was kind of like a matinee idol, good-looking guy, long hair. The only interaction I ever had with him was funny. It was up at Hall of Fame weekend in Canastota, New York. I was trying to interview him, and he kept saying, like acting, no speak English, no speak English, no speak English. And finally, I was persistent trying to get the interview, Sonja. Finally, he got annoyed at me and he told me in very clear English he doesn't speak English. Don't you understand? I told you I don't speak English. Why do you keep asking me?
He does.
He didn't do it in a nasty way.
Yeah.
He was just busy at that moment, whatever. He didn't want to talk at that moment, which was fine. He wasn't rude to me in any way. And if anything, it had me laughing, when he was speaking then. But, and I spoke to him on the phone after, in fact, on something. I forgot what it was about, but he was very friendly in the telephone conversation at a later time. At the age 87, passed away. I don't know whether boxing had any effect later on the years in the ring. It tends to catch up to guys with a long career. But look, he lived a long, prosperous life, and he made his mark, as a great Hall of Fame champion.
Yeah, of course, Revered Italian boxer, two-weight undisputed champion and Hall of Fame inductee. And he won a gold medal at the 1960.
You don't got to look that up, Sonja. I know more than what's on Wikipedia, when it comes to this.
I'm not on Wikipedia, Jack. Don't say that.
I know more than
insulting.
I know more than you're going to find online.
That is insulting because I'm
anything with Nino. I know more than
Jack,
online.
You are like, we are on live and you are literally not even letting me speak.
Because you're not talking, Sonia. I got to fill in the pauses.
Okay, well,
here.
I'm going to let you have the rest of the show. How about that?
No. I'm just saying, Ki-Soo Kim fought Nina. It's a Sonia will come back. She always does. Ki-Soo Kim handed Benvenuti his first defeat, a Korean. It was a very debatable decision that took place, in that fight. That's what happens in fighters' careers. Things aren't always the way they appear on the record, but just a great champion, Nino Benvenuti, really was. And when he fought Emil Griffith at the Garden, one of the things that was a prelude to what would come later on with other sports. It actually started with Benvenuti. The Garden crowd would go, Nino, 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 Nino. And it was just, dynamic, electric. He was charismatic, a great champion in the ring, a charismatic one outside it. The end.
Very good, Jack. Very good presentation of Benvenuto. I was just chiming in to say that I had heard of him, and I actually knew that he was one of the greatest. I mean, even though I don't know as much as you because you're the boxing writer, I was just basically chiming in. But Brent, good morning to you, Brent. He says, debatable question like the Manny Pacquiao fight in Australia. That was ridiculous. The debatable decision.
No, Brent, I thought Pacquiao won that fight against Jeff Horn in Australia. I thought he deserved a decision.
Right.
I just thought it was a wrong decision. I didn't think it was ridiculous. I didn't think it was off the charts. I thought Pacquiao did deserve it, though.
No, don't worry about it, guys. After the live, I will be choking Jack out. Okay. Anywho, poor Mac. I guess I did not see every episode. Like Jack just freaking diced me up on here. Anyway, definitely 87, like you said, you never know if something played a part. I remember my grandmother worked at a nursing home. There was a boxer there when I was a kid. I don't remember his name, but he had some issues from, of course, boxing in a lower league, of course. But all that stuff kind of plays into their health. But 87 is a great age to have been alive and to have set so many records and to have so many beloved fans. Of course, tributes are pouring in worldwide because he was so revered, in Italy and worldwide. So anyway, that will. Are you going to wrap up with the Juan Soto news that you want to talk about?
Very quick with Juan Soto. Michael Kay said he heard from sources that Juan Soto's not happy with the Mets. That he looked his happiest over last weekend when he interacted with the Yankees manager Aaron Boone and Aaron Judge. And there was family pressure that got him to sign with the Mets because they liked Steve Cohn, the owner, and his wife, and the setup the Mets had. So Soto was Juan was kind of pushed into it a little by his family, and he just seemed, doesn't seem nearly as happy being a Met in all his interactions as he was with the Yankees. But, it's something we'll keep an eye on as we go along. And now all the talk, Sonia, about Juan Soto maybe not hustling in the manager or the Mets,
Yep.
Carlos Mendoza wanted to talk to him about it.
Yep. All right, guys. So that was our show for today. Thanks everyone for the likes, loves, comments. On Friday, Keith Engel will be joining Jack. I'll be on vacation. Stay tuned to today's sports shows throughout Roku channel, National Streaming Sports, Huddle Sports Network, as well as Elite Sports Entertainment and Network. Prim and Proper Sports is tonight. The National Professional Show is also tonight at 6 p.m. Stay tuned to the Roku channel. We got sports 24/7 without the cost of cable. And we bid everybody a great day. And with that, Jack and I will say good day.